Hello, hello. This is the Digital Loop, season three, episode one. Hello, Ivan, season three. How are you?
Hi, Paul. Really happy to be back. It has been a long time since we ended season two, but I'm really happy and really excited for the beginning of our new third season.
Yeah, we made a few improvements, especially for those listening to us on podcast. We had a few remarks over the first two seasons that the sound was really not perfect. The last nail in the coffin was when Cédric Ingrand, who is a very famous broadcaster in France, told me that we should actually invest in some microphones. So for those watching the show on YouTube, you can see a pretty big fat microphone in front of me. Ivan is connected through USB as well, so this should actually improve the sound a lot, and I hope you can appreciate that. So
And
today, yeah,
now I look like a phone operator now.
and today we're just both back from Beirut, Lebanon, where we spent actually the last few days of last week plus the weekend for a big event called Banque du Liban Accelerate. So Banque du Liban is the central bank of Lebanon, and they had just released, to make it short, an initiative to help fund startups and to help jumpstart the ecosystem in Beirut. And we were both invited along with a lot of our esteemed colleagues to this event. So what do you think about the event, Ivan?
It was fantastic, and it was really, really excited to see the impact that such initiatives could have in the entire ecosystem. I mean, Lebanon, it was my first time in Lebanon. I know that you have been many times in the past, but for me it was the first time, and it's a really, really interesting clash and convergence of the globalization in one place. You have the situation, you have all this tension with the neighbors, and you have a incredible companies doing a lot of really interesting things, and you have a lot of startups trying to build up from scratch, and they didn't have support. So now I think this initiative is going to be very, very important for them, and it was really, really cool to be part of it.
Yeah, and this is why we call this show. We're talking about acceleration of emerging ecosystems, because actually, when you think about it, even Poland, where you're located, is an emerging market. To be actually completely exact, the term that a lot of economists and banks are using is frontier markets, because the term emerging markets is has this kind of a very catch-all connotation, whereas a frontier market means that they are markets that cannot truly be compared. And I think that's actually very, very important, because we have the tendency of bundling them together, but each of these markets are slightly different. There was, for instance, in another frontier market just before Beirut, it was in Bucharest, in Romania, another ecosystem, another interesting thing. But let's, in general, maybe today what we wanted to see is a few bit ideas of what can actually help jumpstart an ecosystem. We've been, both Ivan and myself, active in these emerging markets, in frontier markets. Have been either traveling and or working in those. So I want a little bit hear of your thoughts here, Ivan. Maybe also lessons you got from the Banque du Liban Accelerate event we were at.
Yeah, I mentioned it while I was on stage that on the first day, while we were on queue to get some food, two gentlemen were behind me, and they were speaking to each other, and they were saying that kind of like in an annoyed tone of voice, that oh yes, I hear all these speakers talk about ecosystem, and it's all about ecosystem and building an ecosystem. Hell, we don't have an ecosystem. And it got me thinking, and I was thinking that yes, I mean, maybe there is a situation that officially there is not an established ecosystem created by somebody saying, okay, guys, here is your ecosystem. But what I mentioned on stage is that I believe that if there is no ecosystem, you should not wait for somebody to actually make it for you, but you should build it yourself. And if you think about it, most of the ecosystems, a big buzzword, but ecosystem is pretty much when people get together, and when people when founders, when startups, when entrepreneurs get together and start sharing experiences, start sharing knowledge, start helping and supporting each other, that's what is at the end of the day is going to build the ecosystem. And it doesn't have to be a formal setup, it doesn't have to be official. It can be, 3 or 4 guys getting together at the bar, getting some beers, and just starting to chat and start to talk to each other. That sounds like, yeah, Ivan, great idea, but that's what it is. And little by little, a month from now, 2 months from now, 6 months from now, that informal meeting could turn into an ecosystem. And I see that what's happening in Poland. I mean, there is a lot of really interesting initiatives happening that started because 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 10 years ago, 2, 3 guys got together in a bar, and today they are a meaningful group that actually is doing really important stuff. So I think the first thing that people in emerging markets or frontier markets, they need to do is take action. And if something is not there, work on it, created it, and realize that it takes time. But if you don't take the initiative to be the first person to take the step forward, and if you're waiting for somebody to create it for you, well, somebody might not come up with it, and then you're gonna just sit down and wait.
Yeah, especially if you wait for the government to actually come up with it, because usually, I mean, the government is a part of it, but let's start first with what you said. I think it's absolutely true. The example you give about Poland, I've been going to Poland for what, 4 years? I'm not sure, and I remember at the beginning it was almost non-existent. And there's very few simple steps that actually can help boost an ecosystem. There's steps like having events, first of all, and events, as you said, do not need to be 1,000 people event with high production value and international speakers. At the beginning, it can just be a gathering of people. Having something as simple, and I know it sounds too simple, but something as simple as a hashtag to kind of create the buzz around the community that attracts other people that might not have heard about it. I mean, these are the simple things. I saw that in Krakow. Krakow created the hashtag OMG RK, OMG Krakow.
OMG Krakow, yeah.
And that became, it's a simple tool, but I mean, these are those little things that add up. I think, like you said, you have to start at the bottom, and usually by starting at the bottom, to create a movement. This is how you start it. If you start with big grand ideas, you might run out of breath very quickly. Then obviously the government has a role as well at some point. And it's true that something that just happened in Lebanon is interesting as well. They can help offer a framework. But usually this comes later, because it's only when a government sees that there is already a movement that they actually react. Another interesting strategy, which is part of what we just said, is what Vitaly Golomb, Max Gervitz, and others are trying to create with their CCC startups, which is basically a venture fund that is active in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. And what they do is they do exactly that. They create events in all spots that are very nascent. I think they're going to go to Azerbaijan or Kazakhstan in the next few weeks. But what they do is they bring people, international people that have had experience in field, obviously entrepreneurship, for instance, and they bring them so that people have this sense of emulation, like, oh wow, I can do something as well. I can learn from these people, because that kind of jumpstarts as well the interest. And the other thing that is important, and that's something that I've mentioned as well in Lebanon, is that some countries, and all countries do for some respect, but some countries have a very strong diaspora. You're Ivan born in Mexico and is now living in Poland, you're part of a diaspora, basically. So when you become successful, one of the things you can do is pay it forward, is you go back to your country, to your city, to your town, whichever, and you actually just, even if it's just actually giving a few advice, but that gives a sense that it's possible. And this is something Lebanon does a lot. Lebanon, like Greece, have countries that have always been open to the sea, and are countries that have spread out for many reasons, economical, political, But anyway, at the end of the day, you have very successful people that come from your country. And these, if you can actually catalyze them to say, hey, please come back, give us even some time on stage, or sometimes just at one-to-ones, or just even in a bar, like you said. These are stuff that actually can jumpstart and help grow a community.
Absolutely, and I think that this is when the role of experts, let's call them experts or specialists coming from abroad, could be an important element. One of the things that I saw is there was a lot of excitement in Beirut due to the fact that the speakers came from literally all over the world. We had speakers coming all the way from Korea, from San Francisco, from Silicon Valley, Singapore, Poland, London. We had a really diverse crew over there, and I think that was a very important element, because when you talk with the people from Lebanon, they were really appreciated about the fact that we went there. But that doesn't mean that if you don't have these international speakers or these international experts coming from abroad, you are not going to be able to bring this knowledge. I totally agree with you. I think that if you have the situation that you have been abroad and you have been learning and getting all this experience and you have developed something big, coming back and sharing that knowledge and sharing that information could be really meaningful for that specific community and for a specific ecosystem. You mentioned Vitaly, our friend Vitaly. He was born in Ukraine,
Yeah,
I believe.
correct.
Moved to the States when he was a kid, but he's traveling all the time over here. He's organizing events in the region, and he's playing a very, very important part in the development of the community and the development of really interesting startups across whole Central Eastern Europe and the Middle East as well. So I think that this is what we need as well, having the leadership unofficially. Again, nobody told Vitaly, okay, from now on, this is what you're going to do. You're going to go here and you're going to start doing these things. No, I mean, we take the initiative, we go for it, and little by little, if more people start joining this approach and this movement, this will have a long term a big impact in the region.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that I forgot to mention as well, is that there's this, and I know we've been talking about it in other shows. We had a show on emerging markets, I think in season 1, when I was in Rio, I think. But anyway, it's this kind of myth that ecosystems, and again, I know it's a buzzword, but it's a good foundation for this debate, should replicate what happens in the Silicon Valley, forgetting about the years and years that have been put by, there's some accidents, some luck, some government initiatives. So there's so many things that happen as if it was, that's my main issue, as if it was the only possible model. If you look at, for instance, it's less consumer services, but if you look at what happens in Switzerland, where I'm from, next to the engineering school, the very famous engineering school, you have a lot of innovation that happens in biotech, clean tech, etc., etc. This is why we don't hear about it much. But I mean, this is a different model linked to universities. It actually can work as well. I mean, there are different models, and at the end of the day, you can invent your own. You don't need to be the Silicon Valley. I would still say, though, that it's true that follow the money, as we said, right? If you to this day, it's one thing to actually effectively start a company and actually start a business in whichever region. At one point, it is still certain that if you want to grow, you might have to actually go to the Bay Area. But that's okay, actually, because you go to the Bay Area, you make it big, you're successful, and then you come back. Like we said before, and that over time, this kind of there's a positive spillover effect where, I mean, you're not going to be able to build Rome in one day. So it's actually okay. And again, against initiatives, and we heard a lot of them, are very important. I will say one more thing before I give you back the microphone, Ivan, is that. The governments have this tendency to actually wanting to put money into the system, and that's great because obviously, especially in smaller countries, it's actually nice to have money. There's always obviously a bit of when I say tainted money, don't take it the wrong way, but I mean, I'd rather have the market decide of who's a winner, who's a loser. But what I believe governments are not doing enough, it's that they should be creating the right framework. And the right framework is basically, and I'm going to be quite blunt, is that everybody needs to make money. From you want to create a startup, from the investor, whether it's an angel investor, venture capitalist, big investor, to the LP, so to the person who actually invests in VCs, in venture capital, everybody has to make money. So you have to find ways to make it easy to make money, to make it easy to open a company, not to take like five weeks to just process the papers. These are the things, and also labor laws. I would also say, to make it actually easy to hire interns, hire and fire people. I believe actually that if you look at Switzerland, which is a country where it's pretty easy to fire people, this is also the reason that people actually hire people, is that because the risk is calculated that way. And I know some people don't like when I say this, but anyway, that's the framework is a debate you should have on it. I understand it's much harder to actually change these kind of laws than it is to put money into the system.
Yeah, but I mean, like you mentioned, I mean, I totally agree. I think that this is something that it's a system, right? And it's an entire ecosystem. It's not just about the entrepreneurs getting together and chatting. It's not just about the money. It's not just about the government. It's everything together. And I think that you mentioned something that I think is very important. Also having the direct contact with students early enough, so if they have this entrepreneurial mindset, they are able to start learning early on and start to being maybe planning to be an entrepreneur, as opposed to going for the corporate career, hating it, and then deciding to do their thing on their own, and then they are not ready and they are not able to cope with what it means to actually start a company. One of the initiatives that I'm currently working on, we're developing an accelerator here in Warsaw that we are planning to operate across Central Eastern Europe, called Draft. And a big part of what we are planning to do is to work closely with corporations, because we believe that the EU-funded accelerators and funds, they have the tendency to not be very effective and efficient. So what we want to do is to work directly with corporations, which in a way is going to keep us, a little bit tighter leash, but it's going to allow us to be more effective. But one of the big initiatives that we're working on is we're talking with universities. So when we can, in a way that we can work with students that are interested in being entrepreneurs, interested in starting a company, or maybe students that already started a company while being in university, so they can come to us and start this mentorship and start this relationship, which in a way it turns into an ecosystem and a community of people helping each other. And this is something that we strongly believe, that working early on with students, helping them understand what it means to be an entrepreneur, what it means to do a startup, it's going to have a big impact. Because at the end of the day, unfortunately, we've been talking about this also, having a startup or being an entrepreneur sounds really sexy, and a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm going to do my own startup and I'm going to build my own company, and yes, I'm going to make apps, and they don't realize that it's a lot of hard work and it's not as sexy as people think of. So I think that if we build the awareness early on, this is going to allow people to, okay, when the things get tough, they are going to be able to cope with it, and they're going to be able to push through and keep moving forward.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we could go on forever. I'm just going to add one more thing. Is you mentioned corporates, and I think because you're working with them at Draft, and I think that actually corporates are often, seen in a very bad light with entrepreneurs and startups, because ooh, big company, boo, slow, boo, disrupted, which is actually, of course, some of these things are true, but at the same time, they're a very big part of the system as well. I know you're supposed to break the rules, you break the system, etc., etc. And maybe some people will call me an old fart for saying that, but I believe that actually they also have a role into the ecosystem, especially for some. There are some services and or goods that are extremely expensive still to produce, and corporates have the actual bandwidth. But that could be a topic for another subject. One thing we promised ourselves with Ivan is to try not to go over like 40 minutes like we did sometimes last season. So talking about Poland, you were talking about that. This is one of the next meetings we'll have Ivan and myself on the road. I'll let Ivan maybe run through the few things we're going to do. I mean, for me first, I'm going to be this week, actually, I'm flying tomorrow. I'm going to be in Switzerland. It's obviously my home country, but I'm speaking for a big group of media, Al Media. It's an event in Lausanne. It's in the engineering school, one of them mentioned before. I'm going to also have an event in Geneva tomorrow night, actually. So that's for me. And then Ivan.
Yeah, I mean, we have a very, very busy couple of weeks, but really exciting because we get the opportunity to travel and do some stuff. And actually, we're going to meet in some of these events. I will be traveling to in Poland. I have a couple of events. This week I will be there in Questus. There is a big kind of like workshop together with the Charter Institute of Marketing, so I will be speaking over there. Then on next week, I will be in Krakow speaking at the Hugh Brown's Warp event.
That's a corporate accelerator. See?
Yeah, I will be the keynote speaker over there. Next day, big day for the Digital Loop. We are doing our first in partnership with the Digital Think Tank, we are doing a big conference in Warsaw on mobile, on mobility, digital and mobility. This will be in Warsaw on December 3rd, and I will be speaking there, and I will be co-hosting the event.
That's really exciting, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, this has the potential to be a lot of interesting things, and we're gonna keep you posted about what we're gonna be doing with the Digital Think Tank. Next day, the Digital Loop joins forces together and gets together again in Warsaw. We're gonna be speaking at the ICT Summit, big event in Warsaw, and Paul will be joining us. We'll be here in Poland, so it's gonna be great. And then the week after, Paul and I will be at Le Web in Paris. Paul will be co-hosting the event. He did an amazing job last year. So he will be back. He will be back on stage, and I will be back as official blogger of the event. So I'm really, really looking forward to having a great experience in Paris. And if you guys see us either in Switzerland or in Poland or in France or anywhere, come and say hi. We always appreciate very much when you come and tell us that you enjoy the show. One thing I mentioned, when I was in Beirut, we had one guy, we had one guy that came and said, like, guys, I'm a huge fan of the show. And I'm like, oh, it's a guy from Beirut. And it was really, really appreciate that, the fact that he came, he said hi, and he told us how much he appreciates our show. So, yeah, come and say hi.
Exactly. And time to say goodbye then. And I'll see you, I guess, next week, Ivan, right?
See you next week, and have a great week. Bye-bye.
Godspeed. Bye, guys.